Well, I really can't say that there is one most common issue, but I can tell you that it all boils down to something that's very much in common. Most people have confused remembering with thinking. So they come in and they tell me that I always have to be afraid in a situation, or I can never get myself to do this. And it has to do with their thinking that, you know, in the past I've never been able to do something, so therefore I won't be able to do it. So whenever they think about it, they have big pictures in their mind and voices and feelings moving in the same direction, when what thinking really is reversing all of those processes, putting up new big shiny pictures in their head and talking to themselves in a better voice and spinning their feelings in the opposite direction. Now, depending upon what it is, there's a whole variety of techniques that you get people to do to think instead of remember. Because remembering produces a state called hesitation, and thinking leads to action. And you know, people come in, they go, it's just that I think this, and they're not really thinking, they're remembering. And when you stop remembering what you can't do and start thinking you can do things, people always surprise themselves delightfully. Well, see, most people are looking for happiness, like they're going to get there, you know, like you fall into it and float around for the rest of your life. And happy is an adverb. One happily goes to the store. One happily discusses things with their wife. One happily looks at their children's progress in life. It's more of a state of consciousness, which the people who seem to be happier seem to have certain characteristics. In my book, The Secrets of Being Happy, we list, number one, all the things that define what makes being happy worthwhile. You live longer, you heal from injury faster, you get over operations and heal more thoroughly, you live longer, your relationships are better, the list goes on and on. They've studied it scientifically. Of course, those are social scientists, which I don't necessarily trust. But even Western medicine has now looked at the difference between the longevity and the ability, and even happier people have an easier time quitting smoking and losing weight. That the benefits of being happy, everybody knows about. Now, the procedures that you need to do in order to become a happier person, I outline in my book, and they're quite extensive. But they boil down to simple things, that you need to have a purpose which is achievable. It's one thing to say you want to be happy, and, you know, and that you want to lose weight. It's another to say, I'm going to go to the gym 80 times in 3 months, so that tomorrow when you've gone once, you can go 79. The next time 78, and feel a little better as the number decreases. Because most people, they get all worked up and then they run out of steam. Happy people seem to get more of a sense of a satisfaction the closer they get to a goal. And they don't set insurmountable goals. You know, it's one thing to say, I want to run a big corporation, I want to be a millionaire, I want to own a boat, than to lay out the pieces that it takes to get there. And every time you get closer to achieving a piece, feeling a little better. I believe this is because it relates to our neurology. And our neurology is designed, when you look at a glass and you want to drink a glass of water, when your hand starts moving, it moves slower, but the closer you get to the glass, the more you hone in on the target, the faster your hand moves. Till the moment it touches, then all those muscles release and you switch another set of muscles, and it lifts off slower than it does to the moment it gets to your lips. Our neurology is designed to increase speed and accuracy the closer you get. It has a very non-linear relationship. When you organize your thoughts that way, and you target this, and you start moving towards it and feeling better the closer you get, it releases endorphins and people become happier. And happiness has to do with your serotonin levels, your endorphin levels, and more important than any, the byproducts of those, which is oxytocin. And the people who have a mission in life have a tendency that they have like a mission statement. I'm going to accomplish these big things. Now here's a chunk of it. And the more they get each chunk done, the better they are. And it doesn't matter whether those goals are raising really happy kids or whether those goals are, you know, to own a home and take care of it. You know, that way every time you start to mow the lawn, as the lawn diminishes and gets done, you get to feel good about your overall goal. And you know, if you read a book and you get all excited and you read the first page and then you're less excited and less excited, you never finish the book. But you know, as the pages go by, you look and go 239 pages, and you start reading through, and as the numbers get higher and the number left decreases, you feel better, you'll finish the book. This is how our neurology is structured. And the other is to make clear ideas of success and move towards them rather than just moving away from them. I don't want to be fat is different than I want to be in shape. And the more people set these positive goals, and I lay out in my book all these exercises. When I spend people come to one of my seminars, they come to a prac course for 7 days. Not only are they learning NLP techniques, I'm making sure that for 7 days they practice feeling good, because most people are just not good at it. And while I lecture to them, I make sure they stay happy. I'm a hypnotist, that's pretty easy to do. All the exercises are designed to make you enjoy yourself while you're doing things and while you're solving problems. And you know, people have come up to me at the end of a seminar and go, "It's the best week of my life." Now, to me, I'm thinking, boy, that's a statement on their life. Isn't that a shame? But now that they've had a good week, they know what one is like. So now it's easier for them to go, I want more weeks like this. I want more days like this. I want more moments like that. You know, the more you get used to feeling good, it's just like riding a bicycle. The better you get at it. I don't care who you are, bad things will happen in your lifetime. Every love story ends in tragedy because somebody's going to go first. Whether they leave somebody or die, it's going to happen. Every pet you love, it's going to end in tragedy. So, I mean, part of having good things is that they come to an end. And you know, people lose good jobs. The economy is tough now. A lot of people are having a hard time. It's not so much you're recovering, but you're being determined to go back and find the good stuff. It's again not looking backwards. It's not that you drag yourself up and overcome difficulty no matter how bad it feels. It's that the worse things get, the more perseverance you get. Determination is one of the most powerful things I teach most of my clients. They're not determined enough to clean up the inside of their mind and focus on what they want. And all the people that I've ever spoken to, and I really interviewed a lot of people that made it through things that should be impossible. Concentration camps in World War II, prisoners of war camps in Vietnam. I mean, just the worst of the worst things, you know, being kidnapped and tortured. And when I spoke to the people that seemed to have survived these things well, because, you see, to me, I'm not somebody that goes and finds out what went wrong. I'm somebody that studies the people who do things successfully. NLP is the study of successful behaviors. It's the study of people who got over fears. It's not the study of how people get fears. I leave that to psychologists. They do an excellent job. My job is to find out how people do these things. And when I've discussed it, there were certain things they had. One is a sense of humor. And the other is they kept looking in their mind, thinking about where they wanted to go. Someday I'll be out of this mess and I'm going to do this. And I deserve it. And instead of feeling bad about where they were, even in the worst of circumstances, you take one person who was in the camps in World War II, and they're devastated by it, and they live with nightmares, and they never get over it. And the guy who was on the bed next to him got out, got a job, got married, had a great life, has a wonderful sense of humor. And when I met these, you know, Holocaust survivors, and I realized some of them were devastated by it, and some of them, you know, became impervious to it. When I asked them about, you know, what they were doing, even in the worst of times, prisoners of war in Vietnam, some of the guys that I talked about that were locked up for 8 years and beaten regularly, there was nothing. They didn't let them talk to another person. They were in a cell by themselves. So what they did is they went in their brain and they planted a farm. You know, one of them had grown up on a farm and he visualized a field. He in his mind slowly plowed the field, put every seed in, and sat and watched it grow. Even when they were beating him on the feet with cane, he was growing his garden and telling himself, someday I'm going to be out of this and I'm going to plant this field for real. And you see, when you make vivid goals that tell you, you know, no matter how bad it is, it's going to be over, as opposed to saying to yourself, I've lost this and I'll never get it back, it's never going to happen. You know, it's the tone of your internal voice and the clarity of your images about the future instead of blowing the past up and making it big and horrible. All the people I meet that are devastated by bad memories are still looking at them. If I came over your house and painted an ugly picture on your wall, you'd paint over it, but yet people leave them in their minds year in and year out. What I do is try to teach people to redecorate the inside of their head so it's futuristic and it's a good place to live. What advice would I give them? Well, I wouldn't really be giving them advice. I would be teaching them how planning is done. You know, I don't think that people have difficulty planning. I think that they just plan the wrong things. People plan to not get anything done. They think, you know, they go, what should I do today? And they make a list of stuff, and they go, well, I'm probably just going to sit around and do nothing. And they sit around and do nothing excellently. And there's these pictures in their head they follow, and these they don't follow, and they need to reverse them. They need to become compelled. One of the things about successful people is that they're a little OCD about getting things done, and primarily because it feels good. You take somebody that doesn't clean up their closet, they open the closet and they look in and they go, gosh, I really should clean this mess up. And then they think, but, you know, I could do this, and I could do this, and I could do this, and next thing you know, they find themselves doing something else. It's because they don't really make it a plan, they don't make a commitment to themselves and to other people, and they don't look at it, and the first thing they take out, feel better. And when they take two out, feel even better still. And I teach people how to control their thoughts and their mind in a way where they get control of their brain. It's kind of funny because when I started out, you know, having been a hypnotist for 4 decades, a lot of people say they're afraid to be hypnotized because they don't want anybody controlling them. When the truth is, the way I use hypnosis is to teach them so they can control their own thoughts, their heart rate, their blood pressure, what pictures they make. I'm teaching them the very mechanisms that will probably for the first time in their life put them in control of not just the way they feel, the way they think, and therefore what they can do. Public speaking is probably the largest numerical number of people in terms of phobias. I mean, there are a small number of people that are snakes, a small that are spider, and if you added up all the other fear of heights, fear of snakes, fear of spiders, all together, it probably would be a smaller number than public speaking. And I think our educational system and our clergy and well-meaning people install these fears in us when we're young by forcing us to talk about things that we don't know, choosing us suddenly, and also making us worry about how other people see us instead of worrying about how the audience feels. I teach a class called Charisma Enhancement, but also even on the Phobia Day we do, and in the prac course we spend a whole day teaching people how to turn their fear into curiosity. Because if instead of worrying about how you feel on the inside, you spin your feelings the other way, come out to your senses, and start looking at the people there and wanting them to feel better, instead of paying attention to your stomach, you should be paying attention to theirs. You should be listening to the sound of your voice, watching how they breathe, controlling the tempo of your voice. And probably it's not a good idea to talk about things that you don't know, although people do it all the time. And part of it is that people make these images of scary audiences and they hear their own voice cracking. They make a bad plan. And when I teach people to make a good plan, it's surprising how quickly they become good speakers. I take people who are absolutely phobic of getting in front of an audience, and a few days later they're getting up, you know, and they sound like comics and, or worse, politicians. I stopped smoking cigarettes. If you don't put them in your mouth and you don't light them, then you're not a smoker. And what I did is I just made a decision that I would stop smoking. It was probably 25 years ago. And somebody explained to me in a way I understood that it wasn't good for me, and I made a decision. And I decided that no matter how unpleasant the feelings came, that it just meant I was doing the right thing. So that if I felt bad for 3 weeks, I would be free for the rest of my life, and I'd be healthier, and I could taste food better, and I would piss off all the people that said it was hard to quit smoking. And that was motivation enough for me. And you know, certainly the first couple of days, man, I could really crave cigarettes. And I kept saying to myself, this means I'm doing exactly the right thing. You get the endorphin rush from it, and you move and you go, 3 weeks, I've only got 2 weeks now and 5 days, 2 weeks and 4 days. And 3 weeks later, I barely thought about it, and 6 months after that, I can't even conceive of smoking a cigarette. And I think most people make these things harder than they are. You know, they diet and expect not to be hungry. If you're dieting, you're supposed to be hungry. You're dieting. And every time you feel hungry, you should go, man, I'm really dieting. Aren't I doing great? I'm starving. I must be doing the right thing. And smoking is like that, and I know they've got patches and all the stuff. I never use any of it with. If somebody comes into me, I tell them, you have to learn to enjoy that you're suffering. You know, because it means you're doing the right thing, and then you notice 3 days later you're not quite suffering as much. That means you're really doing the right thing. You're getting it. Then you start looking forward to diminishing, counting the number of times that you crave a cigarette during a day. First it was every minute of every day, and a week later it's a few times during the day. And then it's twice a day, and then you don't think about it for 2 days. And every time you notice that, you feel better. And that's the magic formula, is to lock your mind, make those big decisions. Everybody's made big decisions. They made a decision they were going to move. They made a decision they'd go to college, and they stuck with it. They made a decision they were never going to talk to some guy ever again, and stuck to it. We've all made those kind of decisions. They have a certain location in our mind, big pictures to go with it. They need to save themselves not smoking and everybody around them smoking, and want to be that person more than they want a cigarette. Do I want to be this person, or do I want this stupid cigarette? And when you switch them, it gets a lot easier. Well, I have trouble with that one, because I don't ever see steam coming out of people. I just think that's a stupid anthropomorphism that psychologists have made people think about too much. People feel good sometimes, and they feel bad sometimes, and that's not really a good or a bad thing. There are some things that should scare the crap out of you. You know, if you think about cheating on your wife, it should scare you to death, you know. And, you know, if your blood pressure is really high and your, you know, your glycerin count is through the ceiling, and somebody hands you butter to put on your bread, you should go, oh, wait a minute. So feeling bad is not a bad thing. It's that when you feel bad about the pictures in your head, about stuff you haven't done, and you glump them together and you start calling it self-esteem, you're not approaching things you can do. It's all metaphorical and blah, 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 blah. And they worry about whether kids are going to feel bad about themselves because they didn't pass a spelling test. What you need to do is circle the words they got right and ignore the things they do badly. And I try to teach people to focus on what they accomplish and feel good about it and just forget the rest. I mean, we spend 12 to 16 years in school, and they mark out every mistake we make. And that's not how the human brain is designed to learn. You have to learn to ignore the misspelled words. And, you know, to me, when I taught college, I actually got in trouble because all I gave was A's and incompletes. And I'd give, and people would go, well, it was a test. How can it be incomplete? And I'd go, well, you don't have all the right answers. And I'd give them the test and go get the right answers. So they either had to ask somebody, look them up, but now they're actively seeking the answer rather than forgetting what they're supposed to. Looking at this going, oh man, I'm not good at this, and I'm not good at that, and I'm not good at this. We need to start reinforcing what works instead of punishing people for what doesn't. Well, there are different kinds of phobias and different techniques. How you work with somebody with a fear of heights is different than a fear of spiders. But the major difference is I get people to focus on what's more important, because most of these phobias have been made into such a big deal that people think about it all the time, which is such a waste of time. And you know, there's very few spiders that can't be taken out with a vacuum cleaner. And you know, even when I bring that up to people, I go, you know, you could just holster a vacuum cleaner and walk through the day and never be afraid. Even that would make more sense because it would be proactive. But if they stop and they look at themselves, and what I get them to try to figure out is how much time they've spent worrying about it per day. Because even if it's just a half an hour, suddenly it's 3.5 hours a week. And then you multiply that by 52, and you have a year, and then you multiply it by 10. In the next 10 years, you're going to waste a couple of thousand hours worrying about this, that you could be having fun. Then I have them look and see themselves walking in and holding a spider in their hand. And I go, do you want to be this person? Wouldn't you like to be this fearless person? When you look at that, don't you feel, I want that? And then I have them go back and shrink down, because most of the people's fears, they're afraid whether the object's there or not. Just the other day, this woman was telling me how afraid of spiders she was. And she was shaking in her boots while she was telling me. And I said, excuse me, there's no spiders here. Why are you afraid now? And the truth is, she wasn't afraid of spiders. She had a big picture of a huge spider in her head, and she barely looked at it. She just felt the way she would feel if this giant spider was there. So by having her shrink it down very small, blink it black and white, and then a couple days later, we brought a tarantula. And I had her look at the tarantula in a plastic box, and I had her take one hand, bring it closer, and if it started to feel nervous, go stop. And then look at this picture of the woman not being afraid of the spider and go, do I want this or do I want that? And pretty soon she had the box next to her and she's touching where the spider is. Then we opened it and the guy showed her how to touch the spider. And then I said to her, I said, would you like to hold it in your hand? And she looked at me and said, can I? Now she's going, can I do this? Oh boy, instead of, ah! And there she is with the spider crawling across her hand. But the most important thing is not that she overcame her fear. It's what it means, because now she's that person. She's the person. She was wrong about herself. And if she's wrong about her ability to hold a giant spider, she's wrong about every limitation. And that's the important message. When we do things in the seminar where we get people over a phobia, the most important thing is it means they can do all the things they didn't think they could do. Play music, stand up to their boss, say sweet things to their children, and the list goes on and on and on. It's not just overcoming a fear. It's only a mechanism where you really look at your life and start to move towards things rather than just avoid a bunch of ideas in your head, which means you're avoiding things you remember that actually happened, or you're avoiding things you made up in the first place. Because it beats the alternative, of course. If you're not curious, you're not exploring the world you live in. We, like all organisms on planet Earth, the fittest organisms are the ones that adapt. And adaptation requires curiosity. You know, fear is the absolute opposite of curiosity. It's where you don't look at things, you don't find out what works, you don't find out what's dangerous. Every client that I got for the first 3.5 decades, for the most part, except for a few really rich ones, of course, were sent to me because everybody gave up on them, so nobody cared what I did with them. I mean, you know, they wouldn't have allowed me because I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a licensed psychologist, but basically they threw their hands up and go, this person's driving me crazy, I can't do anything about it. Now we'll pass him on to Richard and let him make a fool of himself. But they gave me case histories, which are lists of all the things they've done that haven't worked. So I became curious, what's it gonna take to get this person to start living their life and being happy? I wanted the depressive to be happy. I wanted the fearful person to have courage. It didn't matter what it was. It's pretty obvious what the opposite of it is. They need to take whatever feelings are spinning through their body and spin them the other way. Whatever pictures they're making obviously are the wrong ones. Whatever they're saying to themselves obviously isn't working. So I'm more like a mental interior decorator. And if I can get them to the state of curiosity, if they really, really look and go, God, I was wrong about myself. I can hold a spider. You know, I mean, I'll take a depressive and an hour later they've spent 45 minutes laughing and giggling with me. And when I look at them and I go, you don't seem very depressed, and they go, well, I'm having fun right now, then you discover most depressives actually have fun, but when they look back at it, they go, well, at the time I thought I was having fun. but they don't step inside of good memories. They only step inside of unpleasant ones. And the doctors say, well, you know, don't you think there's, a chemical imbalance? Well, yeah, but every time you change your state of consciousness, it changes your neurochemistry. They obviously have a lack of oxytocin in their brain and low levels of serotonin. And sometimes I run blood screens on my clients, and sometimes I find out they have potassium deficiencies or a high level of iron, so you change it, you know. You give them a couple of bananas, you know, and you chelate out bad minerals, but by the most token, they still have to put the right neurochemistry in your brain, which is done by thinking. And if they don't think good thoughts, they won't feel good. It's just that simple. If you're sitting around in your head going, oh boy, everything's gonna go wrong, good God, I'm gonna have a horrible time, I'm gonna be miserable, nobody will like me, so you don't go out and meet anybody, then you go, see, I've been lonely all week. But till you open the door and go out and start meeting people and doing things, you're not going to have fun. And if you have no idea what fun feels like, you really don't know what to strive for. Because when you want something, you kind of have to pretend and feel it, and then imagine what will get it. So I try to create that, and sometimes I do it hypnotically, and sometimes I just tell a few good jokes. Well, most people are over-hesitators. That's the way I think about it. When people come in and start talking to me, all I hear in my head is the phrase, needs work. And in order to work, it requires determination. And you have to know what it feels like, you have to amplify it. If you have a little picture of what you're determined about, you need to have a great big picture of what you're determined about. If you got a little voice that says, well, maybe you can, it needs to turn in that says, I'm absolutely gonna do this. I don't think it's nearly as difficult as most people make it out to be. And in fact, I've got 4 decades of absolute proof that that's the case. You know, every time I start a seminar, the first break, everybody comes up to me and goes, well, I like this, but I can't. And, it's only that, and whenever people say to me, it's just that I can't blah, 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 that really means it's only that I can't blah, 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 which really means I'm not doing blah, 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 blah. And getting people to switch from moving away from to moving towards things is not all that difficult. I've modeled how people do it. I've studied successful people. You think like successful people, you get more successful at things. If you go in thinking it's genetic, which is what really in the 60s and the 70s I came up against, they were going, well, don't you really think, schizophrenia is genetic and depression is genetic and isn't the real thread that we go back into your childhood and find out how you got screwed up? And if you understand how you got screwed up, then slowly over the years you can change. Well, it was a great idea. We've tried it for 100 years and it just doesn't work. A lot of people know they fell into a river and now they're afraid of water. But that if you could get terrified in 30 seconds, you should be able to get over it in 30 seconds. It's how you think about falling in the river that scared you for 25 years. It wasn't the river, because the river isn't here anymore. The river's back in Missouri someplace. You're in California now. So you have to change the way you're thinking and then wade out into the water and put on a pair of fins and flap around for a while till you get comfortable. And I've done this with fears of water and fears, and it's not till you get determined. I remember once Moshe Feldenkrais, who's one of the brighter men that I modeled, he did body work, told me how he overcame his inability to eat pork, being Jewish. And he literally ate a piece of pork after he came out of the snow and starving for 3 or 4 days, and he had such a violent reaction to it, he vomited everywhere. And when he stood up, he said, if I'm not going to eat pork for religious reasons, it's one thing, but it shouldn't have a violent reaction when other people don't. So he sat down and he ate a small piece and he just stared at himself, and waited, and then he ate another piece, and then he threw it up, and he did that 13, 14 times till he could eat pork if he wanted to, and then he never ate pork again. But it was the idea that he couldn't do something. And what determination is where you make this, that you go, this is who I want to be, this is who I can be, and you do everything in your power to get there, instead of going, well, it'll never happen. And it's not that people have that attitude for any other reason other than they've been taught to diagnose themselves. You're the kind of person who, oh, we looked at your IQ test, you're not motivated, oh, you had bad parents, blah, 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 blah. You didn't have a good education. Excuse me, some of the most brilliant people that I've met in life didn't have a good education, so they figured out great things instead. You know, once you switch from making excuses and start living, you become determined. And this is what I strive to instill and inspire in every person I talk to. Well, see, to me, humor is a tool that, as far as I'm concerned, that shields you from the stupidity that's rampant on the planet. And if you can't look at how something is funny, you can't get around it. And, you know, because I listen to people's tragedy, I have for 4 decades. And if I empathized with them, which is the opposite of having a sense of humor, my sense of humor isn't a cruel one, although I do pick on people. I try to get them to look at it from a different point of view, which is what humor really is about. You describe the same thing in a different tone of voice, and you take it to its logical extreme, it becomes humorous. You know, that the notion that, you know, that we can spend our way out of debt. There isn't a politician who doesn't like that idea, because they won't be around when the bill comes. And, you know, when I hear politicians go, we just need to spend more money and stimulate the economy. Well, I'm going, you know, if I could spend my way out of debt, you know, if I could, you know, I can't make 1 house payment, and so I'm going to buy 3 houses. It just doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous. And what humor does is get people to start looking at things not from the point of view of how bad it feels, but how ridiculous it is. I'm very fond of saying to people after they explain to me, you know, just looking over at them and going, that sounds like a really good plan, doesn't it? You know, because they'll tell me, well, I think this, and then I never try, and it feels really bad, and the more I feel bad, the less I try, and I go, great plan. And it shields me from having to empathize with how much they're suffering, but it also shields them from the same thing. They'll come up and smirk at me and they'll go, well, it's not a good plan, but I can't help myself. And I said, there's another good plan. And then pretty soon they'll go, well, what else could I do? And I go, well, you could do this. You can look at it and see yourself doing this. I can give them detailed descriptions of what successful people think about. I don't try to fix what's broken. What I try to do is replace it. You know, that there are some things that you can restore to perfect condition, like an old automobile. But, you know, something that's not worth restoring in the first place, which is a bad idea. A bad idea, you know, and rather than trying to fix a bad idea and make it work, you know, somebody tells me I'm stupid because I got a low IQ score in high school. And I go, well, that's really stupid to believe IQ scores. You know, I mean, you know, Einstein got bad grades in school. He was bad at math, for heaven's sakes. You know, and I said, he did pretty good, actually. You know, we all remember him for one equation. He made thousands, but, you know, he was a brilliant mathematician. I said, you know, these people, I met people from the Mensa Society, you know, and they may be able to answer obscure questions, but most of them can't get a date. You know, which one's smart and which one isn't. And when you start bringing this up to people, and I go, do you want to be so smart you're stupid, or how smart do you want to be? And over and over again, I've looked at people who have told me something and just asked them the simple question, well, is this working for you? And they look at me and go, no. And I go, well, then maybe you should stop. And they go, but I don't know how. And I go, good, let me tell you, it ain't that hard. And to me, I'm always using humor in the sense that you chide someone. Chiding is a particular skill that you need to be able to get people out of the crap they're in. You need to, instead of, you know, go, oh, that must be terrible, which just means it's real. You need to get people to look at it and go, I don't have to live this way. And when you start chiding people, you start going, hey, you don't have to do this anymore. Just step over here. And it's the old flirting technique of come away closer. You know, you flirt with people not to marry them. You flirt with people so you have the opportunity to find out who they are. Most people don't flirt with themselves enough to know what they actually could do. My job is to chide them into trying new ways of thinking, new ways of acting, so that they can have more fun in life and get more stuff done. Well, the best way to be more confident is to be more competent at what you do. I realize there are many people that think you just need to visualize yourself being confident and step inside it, but then you'll just be a pompous ass, and that really isn't a good idea. To become more confident, you have to stop thinking about your mistakes and look at what you actually accomplish. If you spell 2 out of 10 words correctly, and you look at the 8, you feel incompetent. But if you go, I got these 2 perfect, you feel more confident. And the trick is to increase what you are doing well and ignore the rest. That's how people become more confident. They have to stop planning to fail and planning to make mistakes. The more you look for where you can have problems and what can go wrong, the more you will find it. The more you start looking at what works, the more you'll find it, and the better you'll feel. I think the best way to feel good about yourself is to do the right thing for the right reason. Somebody drops a bag of groceries and you help them pick it up so other people will see how cool you are. You never really feel good about yourself. But if you help them pick it up because it's the right thing to do, you'll always feel good about yourself. Same action, one gives you confidence and the other puts all of your self-worth in the hands of people that you have no idea what they're thinking. Most people know what the right thing to do is, they just can't bring themselves to do it because they're thinking about it for the wrong reasons. And you shouldn't yell at your kids. Your brain tells you afterwards, it tells you before. And there are times you should, but if you're yelling at them for the wrong reason, you need to look at yourself and go, stop it. And then you need to make a better plan about what you're actually going to do when they spill their milk, and what you're actually going to do when they jump out of bed in the middle of the night, and what you're actually going to do when they come in with dirty pants. Because if you don't have choices, you can't make them. And when you find something that really works, and you visualize yourself doing it enough times, when it comes up, you will. And then you'll feel better about yourself, and you'll have more confidence, and it will last and grow your entire life. Now, it would depend upon the person, I would think, and the situation. I don't want them to become more motivated unless they have something to do. Most people need a better, more precise plan in their mind to become more motivated. They need to start feeling better each thing they get done rather than worse about how much they haven't. And a lot of it just has to do with where the pictures are in your head, how big they are, and what's in them, and how it affects your anemic nervous system. I think what psychologists call feelings is that there are cortical connections between all the hollow and solid organs in your intestines that go right up the brain stem and connect with the rest of your brain. There's an overlap between your visual and auditory cortex, and all these things connect in a way where you feel knots in your stomach and rotating and all these sensations that, people go, my heart is beating, how can I make it stop? And I don't think they really want the answer to that question. It's not about stopping something once it starts. It's about conditioning yourself to make these things work towards you. When people feel hesitant, their feelings are going one way, and when they feel motivated, they're going the other way. Everybody who tells me they can't get motivated goes out and does other stuff, which means they can be motivated. Everybody who tells me they have insecurity, I always look at them and go, are you sure about it? And they go, yes. So it's not true that they're not capable of certainty, they're just aiming it in the wrong direction. People who are not motivated are doing other things, and they need to push this stuff around in their mind so they start getting the stuff done that they want to do, so they feel good about themselves. All of these things are connected, you're asking about. They're all connected in a way that when you reorganize your mind, you become more efficient and more adaptable as an organism. If you give yourself a purpose and a mission, and you keep realigning that mission so that you're adaptable to your environment, your family, your friends, your jobs, you become successful as a person and will feel great. The more you just whine and whinge about it and sit around and hallucinate yourself failing, the more you'll be wasting time. And I know that there are psychologists that say you should accept yourself, but I think that's selling yourself short. I think you can be much more than you ever suspected. one page at a time. I figure out the big things I want to do, I break them into small pieces, and I do each of the pieces. I write from here to there. And that's why most of my books have parts and not chapters, because I set up signposts. I go, this is where I want to get. These are the big steps to get there. These are the smaller pieces, and whether it's chapters or parts or paragraphs, you know, I lay it out, and sometimes I dictate it, sometimes I type it, and you make sure it all fits together. You give it a good read after put it aside for a few days, and you may have to add a little piece, but I don't spend a long time writing a book. My first book took me 6 months, and it was painful, and it's not that great a book. I find the shorter period of time, the more concise, the more my thoughts are focused, the more I can get done quickly. And remember, if you don't say it perfectly, you can always rewrite it. And the trick is to get the words on the paper and the ideas down, and then to take a pair of scissors and cut 60% of it out and flush it out. And instead of worrying about what other people are going to think about it, just worry about what you think about it and make sure it fulfills what it is you want. I had a good friend, Robert Anton Wilson, who was a science fiction writer, who sat down the same 2 hours every day and wrote a couple thousand words. You know, I have tremendous respect for him. I couldn't do it that way. For him, it worked because he was a professional writer. That's how he viewed himself. He wrote a magazine article one day and part of a book the next. And he was prolific. He wrote 33 books and probably hundreds and hundreds of magazine articles. But to him, you know, he could switch from one thing to another. I'm very focused. I'm very good at doing one thing and getting all the way through it. But by the same token, I'll have 7 or different projects going on at the same time. I'll be doing workshops, I'll be making CDs, and I keep it in a different place in the house. I write in this room, I record in this room. He did everything in the same room, and he had it sorted out in his head probably better than I did. Brilliant man and a much better writer than I am. I've got a lot of good ideas, but sometimes I need somebody. I've had a writer, you know, editors come back and go, you say really important things, but it gives me a headache to read your writing. But, you know, once I read how they rewrite it, then the next time I do a better job. The trick is to be better than you were before. And if you're not improving, then you're stagnant. You're not adapting to your environment and responding to it and learning. And you can.